I am Margaret Owen. I'm the director of the Center for Children and Families at UT Dallas. I'm thrilled that everybody who registered showed up. This is fantastic. And so I want to say my words of welcome too. Before I turn to introducing our keynote speaker, I have to express my words of gratitude to the partners that we have for this year's forum, Children's Health, and who we will hear from over lunch, and United Way of Greater Dallas. It's wonderful to have their support, but I'm also going to express my gratitude to our funders and our donors that make possible the Center for Children and Families outreach work in the community. Tremendous. They help us grow. One more thank you. I will say thank you to a person who's not here, Rachel Berglund, who's the Assistant Director of the Center for Children and Families. She's not here because she's on maternity leave, having delivered Carl Christian on Christmas Day. But she got a lot of this going, and it was a bit of a shock or fear of mine that it wouldn't come out quite as it has. But thanks to two wonderful individuals who stepped up and have smoothed the way for a exciting day. This is Jasmine Sutherfield, who is the academic coordinator for the graduate programs in sciences at UT Dallas, and Michelle Modi, our incredible student, staff, assistant to Rachel. And you may have seen emails from either one of them or both of them, and they're tremendous, and thank you very much. And thank you to all the student volunteers, the CCS staff, and our faculty affiliates for all the contributions. Thank you. And now the keynote address and our speaker. There is greater and greater realization that a college education and specialized training are critically needed for upward mobility. But the fact is that among Americans, ages 25 to 34, whose parents didn't finish high school, only 5% have a college degree. This isn't a problem that starts in college. It has its roots early in what we call opportunity gaps. I know all of us are deeply committed to bridging these opportunity gaps and are working in diverse settings and in a variety of ways. We'll hear about many of these efforts today and holding discussions of what's needed and ways to do more, and much of this will come from all of you. I hope we'll hear from everyone. And one quick aside, I heard from someone, and here's the program. It's inside your folder, and it's the small little yellow book. So those of you who have found it, tell your neighbors. It's in there. So you'll know what's happening, when it's happening, and I will do my best to keep us on track. Okay. I want to welcome Debbie Vandell. She comes to us from UC Irvine, where she has now returned to the faculty after serving for 10 years as the founding dean of UC Irvine School of Education. Dr. Vandell is a native Texan. Her bachelor's degree is from Rice University. And after, these days, a relatively brief jaunt in Boston, where she received a master's degree in education from Harvard, taught kindergarten and second grade, and gained her PhD in psychology from Boston University, she returned to Texas, as Dean Bartlett told you, joining the faculty of UT Dallas in her first faculty position. And this is where I met Deborah and collaborated with her not long after I moved to Texas. Our early work together introduced me to her drive and passion to study how development happens and how children's experiences in early education, school time, and in their families serve to influence their cognitive, social, emotional, and academic achievement. We worked even more closely over nearly 20 years' time and after her move to the University of Wisconsin, as we served together as investigators on the almost 20-year NICHD study of early childhood and youth development. In that longitudinal study, we followed the development of over 1,200 children from birth through high school. The study's special focus was on the nature and quality of their experiences in childcare and in their families, then in their schools, in their out-of-school experiences, And this last focus on after-school and summer experiences of the children, that inclusion in the study was very much thanks to Deborah's passion, commitment, and she's a great arguer, convinced us all that yes, we have to add that kind of assessment every single year from kindergarten through high school. Oh, remember those arguments? Anyway, she compelled us to say we must measure all of the children's experiences because they come together. They come together to influence their development in every way. And you're going to hear the data on this. So, I guess a few more words about Deborah. She's received many, Dr. Vandell has received many honors for her work. Elected to the National Academy of Education. She sits on the governing board of the Society for Research and Child Development. She's a fellow of the American Education Research Association, ADRA, American Psychological Association, and the Association for Psychological Sciences. Her testimony before the U.S. Congress and other federal, state, and local government bodies has been used to inform policy decisions in early childhood and after-school programming. In 2014, she received an award from the National After-School Association, naming her among the 25 most influential people in after-school. I'm expecting her keynote address and the discussion and ideas that are coming from all of you will impact the efforts that are underway in our community and stimulate new efforts launched to support and empower children's success in school and their lives beyond. Deborah, I've experienced the value of rich and stimulating collaboration over the years with you and friendship, and I'm so glad you're here to engage with us all, and I'll invite you up to help get us started. So please join me in welcoming.
I want to thank you very much. Can the folks in the back here tell me that I can tone it down a little bit? I want to thank Margaret and the Center for Children and Families for this invitation to speak today. When Margaret sent me an email and called me about a year ago, I said, I'll be there. I'm so excited to do it. After I accepted, my daughter announced the happy news that she was pregnant and that my first grandchild is due February 2nd. But that's pretty soon. The doctors have been telling her the baby could come any day. So as I got on a plane to come here, I said, will you ask baby Jay if he could hold off 30 hours? So I have my phone up here with me. I'll be tracking if we have a baby. If I suddenly walk off the stage, you'll know. And she called me yesterday. She said it's going to be at least another week. So that's great. So I want to thank Margaret for this invitation. I want to thank her staff for the great care they took of me in coming and making all of these wonderful arrangements. And I want to thank all of you for coming today to take part in this forum. We're going to be talking today about one of my favorite topics, which is the role of out-of-school time in children's development. And I hope that those of you who work in the out-of-school time area know how important it is. Those of you who work in other areas of development and education and community, I'm hoping when you leave today, you will also be sharing our commitment to this aspect of children's lives, and because it's important. The story actually starts a long time ago. On the one hand, it's been fueled by concerns. The first of the concerns with children spending time in unsupervised care. That was the area of concern by the book by Long and Long back in the early 80s, talking about latchkey children. And since that time, there have been a number of studies done, I've done them, other people have done them, that have documented, I think you could say pretty much beyond any kind of doubt, about the short-term and long-term negative effects of especially unsupervised time with peers. That unsupervised time with peers, I have not found a study that have found kids hanging out with other kids unsupervised, that is when you find that youth are more likely to be engaged in delinquent activities, substance use, crime-related areas. There's not a lot of what we call positive youth development. Now, eventually, children are, of course, going to be unsupervised. They go off to college, they can get into trouble from there, they become adults, but unsupervised time is a concern, and I've got some work now looking at, even in adolescence, large amounts of unsupervised time with peers in high school. It's related to all of those behaviors that we've just talked about. Other concerns are with youth as both the victims and perpetrators of crime. One of the biggest advocates for out-of-school time are, in fact, the police departments, sheriff departments, and justice departments, because of the compelling evidence that shows over the years now that the highest rates of delinquent activities are actually between 3 and 6 p.m. Not in the evenings, and actually not on the weekends. It's really that 3 to 6 period. A third area that has gotten some attention is childhood obesity. I did a study some years ago where we gave kids beepers. And with those beepers, they would be beeped in the after-school hours between, as soon as school was out, till about 8 in the evening. And during that time, they would say where they were, what they were doing, how they were feeling. And what we found was that when children were in organized activities, they were reporting high positive affect and engagement in activities. When children were not in those organized activities in the after-school hours, they most often were home. And when they were home, they were doing two things together: eating and watching TV. Not surprising that eating and watching TV are actually related to weight. So you have a number of people who are coming out of the public health arena that are, and some of my pediatrician friends are looking at physical activity within the context of out-of-school time as a public health issue with a reduction of obesity. And then finally, you have concerns about the achievement gap. With No Child Left Behind, there was great attention being paid to schools going into improvement, to standardized test scores, and the discrepancies in academic achievement for low-income children and middle-income children, from children from ethnic backgrounds. Schools, principals, superintendents, school boards, teachers, parents, turn to after-school programming as an additional way of looking at addressing the achievement gap. So those are the concerns fueling the expansion. There's also been forces which I always like to include in my talks, and that is that the concern about out-of-school time is also related to a desire to promote positive development. If you ask many, if you talk to many middle-class families, upper middle-income families, folks with a lot of resources, their children have rich out-of-school time experiences. They are involved with sports, with arts, with community service, with a variety of activities after school. The parents are often paying goodly sums of money to provide these experiences for their children because they believe that their children are benefiting from those experiences, that they're developing social skills, that they're developing skills and academic skills in every aspect of development, and they want the children to have the benefits of that enrichment. So today we're going to be talking about programs not just because they help prevent problems, but because they foster development in important ways. So so for me, what I'm thinking, I view out-of-school programs as one of the great resources for children to support and facilitate their development. And I think I'm hoping that by the end of today, if you didn't already think that, you will believe that, based on the evidence. Okay, so the various kinds of out-of-school programs. There are after-school programs that are offered by schools or other organizations on a daily basis throughout the school year. There are extracurricular activities. Some of them are sports, fine arts, clubs. Those are offered by schools sometimes. They're also offered by other organizations. The distinction is that they're more seasonal, or they may be 1 day a week or 2 days a week. They're not 5-day-a-week programs. They're community-based programs such as the Y, Scouts, 4-H, Girls Inc. Some of those programs meet regularly, sometimes they're once a month, and then they're faith-based programs, various kinds of church group kind of activities. Now, often what happens is that children experience a variety of these activities. They're put together in complicated ways sometimes, and so it's not uncommon for children to have one activity. If you interview parents, talk to parents, or talk to kids, you'll sometimes find that they're doing 2 or 3 different things after school. In some of my work that we're not going to talk about today, but I'll just give you, we find that when you get collaboration across these activities, that's good. That you don't have to have, you don't need to be really viewing yourselves in competition, but that we should be finding ways that we're focusing on the child and the child's interests and what the child is wanting to be doing, and how can we meet that. So particularly when you reach adolescence, middle school kids, they're not going to want to go to a 5-day-a-week program, or they many times don't want to. So you find ways by collaborating with people at the school so that children have some voice and choice in those activities. Really important kind of thing. So I view these as or partners in out-of-school time. What I'm not talking about today, and as I'm looking at the slide, I would wish I could be editing it. I'm not talking about summer programs at this moment. I should be. So I also serve on a board for the National Summer Learning Association. Summer is an immensely important time for children. And I have some research evidence, other people do, about those benefits of summer learning and some of the kinds of declines that you see in the summer when children don't have activities, so that what they're actually doing is spending a lot of time watching TV and eating. So that's it. So I should be having summer on here too, but I'm not going to be talking about summer today. This is an interesting slide, that disheartening slide, that shows over time the increasing opportunity gap in terms of spending on enrichment from 1972 to 2008. The 2008 is right before the beginning of the Great Recession. This pattern, I'm going to talk to my colleague, Greg Duncan. I'd like to have this slide updated to see what's happening now. But what Greg Duncan and Dick Murnane in their book called With or Opportunity, which is a wonderful book, looking the effects of the growing income gap, the growing income gap discrepancies in this country. And here what you see is in that black line, you see the adjusted spending from 1972 through 2006 by low-income families, or the amount of money that's being spent on their children's out-of-school activities. What you see on the right, or on the blue line, is that over that time, in real dollars, an increase in the spending for the top quintile, the top 20% of income. Families that have resources are using those, who have the resources that they can spend, are using some of those resources on out-of-school time experiences. The children who have the least access to those resources, their exposure opportunities have declined over time. So as we start talking in my through the rest of this presentation, as I'm describing some of the kinds of effects that we find related to out-of-school time, social and cognitive benefits, that children who could benefit from those experiences, low-income children, and some evidence that they would benefit the most from those experiences, are not having access to it. It's a problem. So this slide is one of the programs that is specifically designed, funded to support and provide after-school programming for low-income children, is the 21st Century Community Learning Center program. Are any of you in here with programs that are funded by the 21st Century program? Raise your hands high and proud. Great. The 21st Century programs started in 1998 with, as a pilot program during the Bill Clinton's administration. Started out at 360 program sites, and it was serving some 40,000 children and youth. That program has then been, it went through a pretty dramatic expansion, and then it has sort of leveled off. Almost every Congress, the program sweats out whether it's going to be funded again. This is the figures for 2015, and they were a great source of celebration when the program was renewed in this past Congress, with them being in about 11,000 program sites, serving about 1.7 million children. So you see those blue dots are representing the coverage of 21st century programs at that time. I will have to say that many of us are worried about the future of this program because we don't know what's going to happen. And I was speaking with the program officer from the Mott Foundation, which was involved with the original funding for the 21st century, and people are very busy marshaling research evidence, again, about the impacts of these 21st century programs. But this is the 21st century program is the largest investment in programming serving low-income children in this country. So it really goes to schools and community-based organizations that are helping to provide after-school programming in low-income schools and communities. Okay, so let's move to number 2. What are the key ingredients of effective out-of-school time activities? I'm going to give you the bottom line, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the research that has backing up these generalizations that I'm going to be making. But I'm not going to give you all the research evidence. Those of you who are interested, you can contact me, and then you tell me how much data you want. And I will send you various kinds of reports and numbers, because I know, especially people who are working with funders, are looking for evidence all the time. So, but I'm going to give you today, this is a community address, so I'm going to not give you a huge amount of data, although I'm going to give you some in a minute. But, so what are the ingredients? You're supposed to be getting on the edge of your seat. So is she going to tell us? Is she going to tell us? Is it coming? Here it is. Okay, so there's 3 key ingredients. The first and foremost is the quality of the programming. And when I say quality, what people say, well, what do you mean by quality? And the way that we assess quality in both observations and in the surveys, I'm going to be talking about both of those a little later, is what's happening in the program. What are the experiences of the children in the program? That's what I have a very egocentric view of quality. When I view quality, I put myself in the body of that child. So what's the quality of that child's experience? That's for me what quality is. You could have other definitions, but when I'm talking about it, I'm talking about the experience that a kid is having. And there's 3 aspects of that. One is engaging activities. That the activities are interesting, and that the kids are engaged in them. Note, I didn't say anything that they're academic. You know, I didn't say anything about the specific content. There are great activities that are STEM, science, technology, engineering, math related. They're great literacy activities. There's sports, there's music, there's robotics. The point is that the activities are engaging and interesting, whatever they might be, whatever the content area. The second, which I should put up as first actually, is supportive relationships with staff. In study after study that I have done and that others have done, we find that the single most important ingredient in an effective after-school program is the quality of the interactions between the staff and the children. That the children feel supported, valued, that the caregiver or the staff member is warm, is taking pleasure in the children, and they know. And so that supportive relationship with the staff is the most important thing. If that follows, actually you typically have interesting activities. These 3 things often go together, but the most important thing is the staff. And then the third is supportive relationships with peers. So what are the quality of the interactions that children are having with other children, students, adolescents in these programs? So those are the 3 pillars. When those 3 things are good, children are going to thrive. If they're not good, children will often stop going to the program. Because these are voluntary programs usually, so they will stop going. But we also don't, as you'll see later today, we don't see the gains. Okay, the second ingredient is dosage. Here we're talking about how much each week. So how many hours a week, how many days in the year. There is some, in one of my studies, we were looking at a program for middle school adolescents. The kids there needed to be there 30 days for us to see an effect. In some of the programs for elementary school children, we've seen some of them where there's a cut of 60 days. The issue is that you really have to, that one day of a quality program is not going to do it. 2 or 3 days of attending a program. So like a one-time activity those one-time activities, they're good for some things, like introducing the kid to something. It's not going to be life transformative for most kids. Like, I don't know of any time it's been. So dosage is important. In the research studies, where you have greater dosage, you get bigger effects. Okay, the third one is duration. And there what I'm meaning is how long. And there we're talking months, years. Most of the studies are finding you get bigger effects 2 years than 1 year. It's not double, but it's bigger. So one of the areas that the investment in out of school is not a short-term investment. It's you need to be schools, community organizations, you need to be in it for the long haul. You need to be thinking for the students, what are you going to be doing with those third graders, those fourth graders, those fifth graders? How are you going to translate that into 6, 7, 8? So and you can't keep doing, you all know this, you can't think that a program that's going to be appealing to a second grader is going to be appealing to a fifth grader, is going to be appealing to an eighth grader. So you're looking for sustained engagement over time to get the biggest benefits. Okay, those are the 3 ingredients. Third point, when these ingredients are in place, we see positive effects of OST programs, out of school time programs, on students' social and academic outcomes. So let's look at some evidence. Those of you who've heard me speak before will say, oh, I'm going to say, oh, I've seen these slides before. These slides are really, they're important enough for me to show them to, people sitting next to me on an airplane. Have you seen this slide? Okay. So this is the results of some work by Roger Durlock and Joe Durlock and Roger Weisberg and Polly Ockham. It's a meta-analysis. What a meta-analysis is where you have a number of studies. You take those results of those studies, and then you look at the overall effect across these studies. So it's not just one study, it's going to be a variety of studies. So they looked first at social outcomes. And you'll see there's self-perception, and there's 23 studies, and there's positive social behaviors, and there's 36 studies, and there's reduced behavior problems, and there's 43 studies, and there's reduced drug use, and there's 28 studies. And this is the kid outcomes across those studies in programs that they called SAFE programs, S-A-F-E. SAFE. And that stands for programs that had sequenced, active, focused, explicit programming that was actually focusing on the social emotional area. Roger Weisberg is one of the main people in the country who looks at SEL, social emotional learning. Some of you may have heard that. I think that's being picked up in a lot of places. So there, in this work that Roger and Joe did, they were looking at programs that were sequenced, active, focused, explicit in the social realm for after-school programs. And so these are the effects that they found in programs that were doing that. Okay, the light blue bars show the effects in programs that were not having a curriculum that was safe. That is, they were kind of, the quality of those programs was not as high. And what you see here is that the effects of the high quality programs are on the order of 3 times, 4 times as great than the programs that were the not safe programs, where the effects are much smaller. Now it's interesting because the effects of the not safe programs, they're still getting some effect, but it's not as great. And these are in the social realm. Now, the next lesson that comes out of this meta-analysis is they also looked at academic outcomes. Take-home message from today's talk. After-school, out-of-school programs can get academic outcomes, do get academic outcomes, even if the programs are not explicitly academic. They get academic outcomes. If your after-school program or an out-of-school program has a heavy academic focus, remedial focus, extending the school day in terms of especially drilling, don't do it. Don't do it. It's a diminishing return. You can get better return on your out-of-school activities if you do these engaging activities that are not, at the end of the school day, making some kids have a longer school day when they need to be doing something else. So, here's what we see in this meta-analysis on school achievement. School achievement is academic language for test scores. So you're seeing an effect size there of about 0.2. You're seeing effects on grades. You see effects on school attendance. We see that in almost every study. Kids who are going to high-quality programming are more likely to go to school. Especially sometimes those programs are after school. You can only go to the after-school program if you go to school that day. And school bonding. Okay, what happens to the programs that are not safe programs? And you see much smaller effects. Now keep in mind that these are programs that are focusing on social emotional learning. These are not explicitly academic programs, but in these programs that are providing these enriching experiences, we're seeing larger gains in academic outcomes as well as social outcomes. That positive effects are related to sustained participation. And here I'm going to turn to some work that was with the study of early child care and youth development that Margaret and I worked together on for 20 years. And these are some effects that we found in a paper where we were first looking at children's performance in kindergarten and first grade. And what we did was that we found out from the mothers, they would report and we would call if their children were engaging in an organized activity. We call them twice a year, so at this point, kindergarten and first grade, there were 4 calls. And in those calls, the children could be participating in an activity or not. And we looked at the proportion of time that they participated in activity by the mom's report. You could go from 0, we called them 4 times, they never participated. They could participate once, that's 25%. Participate twice, we're up to 50%. 3 times, we're up to 75%. Are you with me? I'm doing a lot of higher level math here in your head, but if you're with me on this epic thing, it's going to be good because we're going to come back to it again in a minute. So I'm making sure you understand what we're talking about epics. 4 epics is, we're calling that sustained, that's 400% of the time. Here's what we found. Controlling for the children's math achievement prior to kindergarten, controlling for the quality of their experiences in kindergarten, controlling for their early child care experiences, controlling from their family experiences, everything that you could think of, that we could think of to control for, what we're finding is that those children who had more epochs of participation in the kindergarten first grade period, we saw gains in their math achievement test score in first grade. So we then did a second paper, and now we looked at kindergarten through 3rd grade. Still calling about these participation twice a year. So you now know by third grade, so you have kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. So you can figure out how many epochs we had, and you know, okay. So here what we found in third grade was that those children who had more sustained participation in after-school programming, and in this case we're also now controlling for the quality of their classroom experiences in first grade and third grade. We're looking at what the teachers are doing. So net of that and all of the other covariates that we could put in, we find that those children who had more sustained participation in after-school programs, that they had higher academic grades and higher work habits, which now has a new name. In all my work we always called it work habits. The new name is grit. So some of you may have heard about grit. But so these kids who were doing more sustained participation were showing gains in work habits and in academic grades. That's in grade 3, net of their performance at kindergarten. At age 4 and a half. Okay, then what happens? So then we went to grade 5. Now we've got epochs. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. So we have more epochs. And those children who had more sustained participation in after-school activities, we found gains in academic grades, work habits, aka grit, and math achievement. That's on the performance on a standardized test of math, Woodcock-Johnson. So what we're seeing in this NICHD sample is more sustained participation over time related to these gains. What we also did was we looked at performance, we looked at the sample and divided the sample into low income. These are children who are who qualify using the federal guidelines as low-income children, income to needs at 1.8. We had middle-income children, as also defined by the federal guidelines of what it means to be middle income. And then we had high-income children, using the guidelines. If you look at the blue line, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, there you go. You see that blue line? The blue line are low-income children. On the far side there, you're seeing low-income children who have low amount of epochs. In this case, 11% of the time, they were doing an after-school activity of those phone calls. So across time, you remember the epochs, so they're a small proportion. It's not 0, but it works out to be about 1 of those epochs across middle childhood. If you, or this, actually, I'm sorry, this is grade 3. Backtrack, grade 3. If you then look the middle period, right here, those are the children who are engaged in activities about 45% of the epochs, almost half the time in 3rd grade. And then the kids who had sustained participation across that period, you'll see there about 78% of the time. Look what's happening. Those kids' math performance, net of the other factors that we're putting in, is the same as the middle-income kids and the high-income kids. If you look at the red line, those are the middle-income children. You're seeing the more they're participating in activities, their performance is going up on the Woodcock-Johnson math. And at the high end, they look like the high-income kids. And if you look at the green bar, you'll see those children's scores pretty much are high across the board. That's in 3rd grade. So what happens when we get to 5th grade? In 5th grade, we saw everybody gained. Everybody gained. But that the low-income children gained the most from sustained participation. And that the middle-income children gained. They didn't show as much gains. They all ended up doing great, and everybody gained. This is actually what we want with interventions. You want, or any kind of program, we want everybody to gain. But what we're also wanting to do is level the playing field, and we want to be able to see something like this graph is exactly what we want to see. We're seeing gains for everybody, but low-income children are gaining, are catching up, reducing the achievement gap. Okay. So we've been looking at student outcomes. Let's now, and we've talked about these quality ingredients, let's now turn to levers to improve student outcomes. And there have been, I've been involved in a number of projects now where we're trying to say, okay, what can we do to help programs reach these outcomes that we want. So we're going to talk today about findings related to staff professional development. Then we're going to talk about alignment between after-school programs and host schools. And then we're going to talk about the value of ongoing assessments of the program and student outcomes as levers for program improvement. And I think I'm doing okay still. Time is good. Great. Okay, I'll give you a sidebar, and Jim is going to help keep track of my time. I've got myself a Fitbit, and I don't know if any of you have it, but it goes off, and I can't tell what time it is. And so it used to be when I would talk, I'd have my watch right here, and I'd know like how much time I had. And now I don't have a watch. I have no idea how much time it is. You know, it could be noon, and you guys are still sitting here, and it's going to be very embarrassing. Okay, but so you're going to help me here because I don't actually know what time it is. Okay, staff professional development. Let's look at it. Okay, we're great. One of the projects that I have worked on for about 3 years is an evaluation of a program in California called the Power of Discovery. It's a program, STEM professional development program for after-school programs in California. California, under the Schwarzenegger governorship years ago now, passed a program called the After School Education and Safety Program. It provides about $1 billion a year for after-school programming for low-income schools and community groups that are funding, that are supporting young people. After-school education and safety program. It is wonderful. It has, it is connected to the California Department of Education. And so this Power of Discovery program is serving 21st century community learning centers, these ACES programs, which are, sometimes these are the same programs, they just get 2 funding streams coming in. And there was a group of foundations in California, the Samuele Foundation, the Bechtel, Noyce, who worked with the state, did this funding collaboration. I'm saying this because it's a great model for communities to be thinking about. So the program was, in this case, was to be providing STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, STEM professional development to after-school, these publicly funded after-school programs serving low-income children. So that's what this, what the Power of Discovery was doing. There were some 600 programs that participated in the Power of Discovery. And they were located across the state, and different programs had somewhat different models about what kind of professional development that they were going to do, and that enabled us to look at some different kinds of mechanisms that for doing professional development. When we started to do the project, this was the logic model that we proposed testing. And it was, if you look over on here, you see that's STEM PD. And we hypothesized that the STEM PD was going to support changes in staff beliefs about the value of science and about their confidence in implementing these STEM activities. We also thought that the STEM PD might then be translated into the program activities. The STEM activities, an increase in the use of STEM activities, and maybe the quality of those activities. And the quality there, you can imagine what I'm going to be assessing if we're talking about quality. Staff-child interactions, interesting, engaging activities, relationships with peers. So that's good. So that's what we're going to be looking at on the quality side. And then we're looking at, we were hypothesizing that those were going to be related to student outcomes. Now let me give you a little back. The after-school staff in California may be very similar to the after-school staff here in Texas. I haven't studied the Texas figures now, so I don't know, but in California and nationally, the majority of line staff and after school have some college. Most of them do not have college degrees. Another reality in the California programs is that there is high staff turnover, so that the programs that we've studied and in other studies that I've done, about a third of the staff are new staff. They've been there less than 6 months. Another third have been there 18 months or less. So 2/3 of your staff is new. And then you have some longer time staff. But it means that after-school programs are really facing a continuing need for professional development. It's actually it's different than what happens during the K-12 schools, where most of your staff has been there and you're building off of skills that people have had before. It's a different, it's a real challenge. So this is the context in which the professional development is being offered. So what did we find? We found a simple, so we tested this, and I'll be happy for the academics here in the room to share the structural equation models with you. So we've tested these models, and this is a simplified version of what we found. And what we found was that PD, and in particular 2 types of PD, STEM-related staff meetings. These were meetings of the after-school staff, site coordinator, the staff, sometimes a representative from the region, which is how the after-school programming is overseen by the state of California. STEM-related meetings, where there were more staff meetings explicitly devoted to some time about STEM programming. And STEM-related meetings of the staff with the teachers at the school were predictive of changes in the staff beliefs about the value of STEM learning and about their confidence in implementing STEM programming. And we then found that those staff beliefs were predicting program quality. The program quality was as reported by the children, where the kids are doing these surveys reporting on the quality of their experiences, and we then come up with a quality score based on all the kids in the program in those classes. So we found those staff beliefs were then predicting program quality. And then we found that those gains in program quality were associated with changes in child outcomes from fall to spring. And there we saw, see my favorite measure, work habits, same one, same grit. We're seeing gains in grit across the year. We're seeing reductions in misconduct. We're seeing improvements in math efficacy, improvements in interest in science, and this is controlling for prior performance. These seemed, I don't know, the findings were stronger than I had expected. This is a one-year program, or it was a one-year analysis we were doing. So this was 2013-14. So we went back in 2015. The study wasn't as strong because the funder was slow getting the money to me. And so we didn't have the funding at baseline. I was paying for it out of my startup money, and the money was going down and down, and I thought, oh my God, I can't pay any more until I know I've got some money coming in. But it replicated. Same model, and replicated in the second year. And we then did some things to see if kids were getting it for 2 years, and you can imagine what we found. In those places where kids were getting it for 2 years, we were getting some bigger effects than if they had it for 1. That's that going in the longer haul. But keep in mind, there is a lot of turnover in these programs. And the professional development we did, this is not going to be, it's a continuing process of professional development. Second lever. This is a really good study. We're looking at the alignment between the school and the after school. Now this is a study by Tracy Bennett. Tracy did her dissertation with me, so this is her dissertation project. What Tracy worked for one of the big providers in California, a program called Think Together. Some of you may be familiar, those of you in the after-school field may know Think Together. It's a very good program spread across much of California. So what Tracy did, using the Think Together sites that were available to her, looked at the alignment between school and out of school. And in looking at it, she collected surveys from the site coordinators. Those of you who are not in the out-of-school area, site coordinators are like the head of the program. They're like the director but they use the word director sometimes for the person above. So it's like a school principal. So directors and some of these are kind of like superintendents if you were going to go. So these are the site coordinators and the principals. She did surveys with both of them. And she asked them about 3 areas. Academic resources. So each independently reported, did the after-school program have access to the computer lab, to books, to the library, various resources in the school, curriculum. She asked about communication. How often did the site coordinator talk to the principal? What kinds of communications did they have? She asked about the teachers. If you remember back in the PD where I said staff meeting, or the staff meeting with teachers, that was my first time as I presented that to go, oh my God, that's an alignment item, and I hadn't realized it until I was talking. So that was that talking between the teachers and the staff. And then a shared sense of partnership, where the principal said, yeah, the after-school programs play a really important part in our school. And the site coordinators said, yeah, the after-school programs play a really important part in our school, and we are really interested and want our students to be succeeding in this school. So this is that partnership. So that's what she asked site coordinators and principals. High alignment she defined as when the principal and the site coordinator both agreed in these independent reports that there was high sharing of academic resources, frequent communications, and a strong sense of partnership. When there was high alignment, she found gains in standardized math scores in these schools. We're talking here on the order of about 6,000 students. So these are a lot of schools, she's nesting things just as you need to do. So when alignment is high overall, when it was high for resources, high for communication, high for partnership, you saw gains in standardized math scores from the prior test year to the spring of the study year. You'll also see that when program attendance was higher, that's that dosage thing, for those kids who attended their after-school program more days, she saw bigger gains in math scores. You'll also see she found gains for English language arts scores, standardized test scores, where alignment was higher, where attendance was higher. Both of those were significant. Both of them were contributing to gains in English language arts scores. She also looked at misalignment. Misalignment was the difference between the principal report and the site coordinator report. When there was a bigger discrepancy between what those two people reported, a bigger discrepancy, principal says, everything's great. Site coordinator says, things are poor. That's a discrepancy. Or the site coordinator says, everything's great. Principal says, not so good. Bigger discrepancy was predicting declines for those kids in math achievement. When there was a bigger discrepancy related to the use of resources, and when there was a bigger discrepancy in this sense of partnership was related to declines in math scores. Alignment, I think, it's until Tracy had done her dissertation, I was not aware. I know people talk sometimes about alignment, but this is the first study that I'm aware of where someone really tried to study this issue of alignment between school and after-school programs. Okay, third lever. As part of the after-school education and safety program, that's that ACES program I told you, the state of California, the $1 billion. As part of the legislation, there was an accountability part of it, that the after-school programs had to be turning in some kinds of outcomes, sort of like what you have to do with the 21st century. You have to turn in some outcomes. Well, the legislation said that there needed to be, that you could turn in standardized test scores. But you could also turn in social outcomes. So they came to me and asked if I would develop an assessment that could be used to help programs meet this state requirement. And there are many programs in the state that would be served by this $1 billion program. So we developed a toolbox, and on any given year, we were measuring outcomes for about 100,000 elementary students, 60,000 middle school students, 70,000 program staff, and classroom teachers. So we collected from the students overall quality scores. You know what we're looking for. The kids' reports of their supportive relationships with staff, engagement and interest in activities, and supportive relationships with peers. We took, as if you guys were one class, you'd all turn in your rating, and then we would do the average rating for all of you, and that's the quality score for this class. Right? So, what we found? We found that the youth reports, children and adolescent reports of the quality of their programming was related to the classroom teachers' reports of their child outcomes. We measured the kids at the fall and in the spring. So again, we're looking at gains. We're finding that the quality of the experiences in this program across the state is related to work habits, grit, social skills, helping and empathy, and academic grade, which would be like across all of like that for the programs at that school. Get the scores for all of the schools in their district that are participating. So directors were able to say, this is the quality score here, this is the quality score here, this is here, and these are what the student outcomes look like in each of these programs. We also would give them the scores for the state as a whole. Here's how my program is doing relative to other programs, and then we would talk to them about how to improve. So, it's worked out great. We now do it in California, Utah. We have a version to do a summer learning. We have summer programs. It's a great measure. I've got one more thing to talk about. Marcus told me it's time, so I'm going to talk fast here. I promised I would get to combined effects of early child care and after-school programs. They're historically, the early childhood community and the after-school researchers, we've worked in silos. You have early childhood people, you have out-of-school people. They don't actually know much about what the other one is doing. We also have separate communities of practice. As you know, you have early childhood advocates, you have early childhood practitioners, professionals, you have after school. Those tend to be siloed. We really need to stop that. But another problem that happens is that there are competitions amongst them for funding. So that, I mean, so they're rivals. That's got to stop. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's a problem. Okay, so what I did using the study of early child care and youth development, we looked recently at a paper that's under review at the joint effects of early child care and out-of-school programming. Here we're looking not at the preschool, we're looking at the age 15 outcomes. So we're looking to see what are the effects of early child care quality and sustained participation is K-5. And what we found related, or what we find at age 15, is that both the quality of early child care and sustained participation in after-school programs were both related to children's academic achievement at age 15. And the effect is the same size, and it's an additive effect. We also looked at early parenting. It is going to the to this age 15. If you look at early parenting and middle childhood parenting, using the measure that Margaret has devoted so much of her life with, or observational measure, those effects are about twice what you see here. They're also significant, but we see this effect of early child care and sustained participation on math achievement. They're both important, and about equal. How about reading comprehension? The effect is significant for both early child care and after-school program. The effect is the same size. And again, you can be thinking about that as a nice additive effect. You get something from early child care, you get something from out-of-school programs. They're both important. For impulse control, which is also sometimes called emotion regulation, behavioral regulation, it's one you see a lot, very big deal in early childhood these days. We find a relation between the quality of early child care and impulse control at age 15 that we did not see an effect for sustained participation. If you go to social confidence, that is being able to do kind of speaking in through leading people, this sort of, one of the things that people sometimes think their kids get from their after-school activities, we get the effect of social confidence, not from early childhood, but from after-school programs. So we're talking, in this paper, we're looking at both the cumulative effects and the differential effects of early childcare, early education, and after-school programs. So, some final reflections. I hope you'll leave here thinking that after-school programming, out-of-school programming are linked to a wide variety of academic, social, and behavioral outcomes. For those benefits to be realized, the activities have to be of high quality, of sufficient dosage, and sustained over time. While all children appear to benefit, low-income children appear to benefit the most. And I would conclude that we have real opportunities for after-school programs and out-of-school time to make a difference for children's development. And I want to thank you. I think we have some time for questions. Do we, Martha, or Margaret, or did I take up all the time? Oh, shoot, okay.
But there'll be time throughout the day, so
Okay.
one or two
Okay, so any questions?
or comments?
I see somebody way in the back.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. I share your interest and your hope for out-of-school time. I want to ask you to reflect on something that's become a huge force in children's lives and how it might interact with the effects of out-of-school time, and that is this. Digital communication. From a fairly young age, many children have the ability to text, to use their cell phones. They're heavily engaged and connected to these devices. How does that affect the quality of out-of-school time? I worry that a lot of unsupervised time is spent scrolling feeds, looking at social media, looking at texting. Is there a way you can harness that and use it for good? Do high-quality programs keep kids off their phones? How do you think about digital communication and their obsession with it in relation to out-of-school time?
Oh, Marion, that's a really good question. I didn't recognize you all the way in the back with my glasses. My eyes are messed up, but once I heard your voice, I went, oh, I know that person, thank you. In most of the programs that I observe, which are serving low-income students throughout California and elsewhere, you don't, interestingly enough, see devices, kids with devices in these programs. So what you're more likely to be seeing there are kids being physically active and engaged in various kinds of music and art kind of things, not so much with devices. I think that, you know, as we're going to be looking at children's development over time, we're going to have to really pay attention to what is a completely different context than many of us studied all of these years, because I am concerned about developing some of the social skills that you get from looking at somebody and interacting with them, where you get some face-to-face kind of interaction, because the cell, you don't get that kind of feedback. It's a different kind of thing. I know you and many others are starting to study it. It's going to be an important area to look at.
Well, and to me, it seems one way these programs might enhance development is they might protect children from spending hours a day staring at these screens.
Yeah. I think I might add that. I'm going to add that to that slide. I'm going to add it. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Yes, they're in the back.
I'm thinking about the publishing companies that publish instructional materials. And I'm also thinking about this misalignment between the after-school and the post-school. What roles could the publishing companies play in facilitating that alignment between the after-school and the post-school?
That's a really good question. After school can provide science enrichment, math kind of enrichment, literacy enrichment. It really needs to be done in a different format than the typical classroom instruction, again, because of the long school day. That said, I have a colleague of mine, actually some of you might know him, George Farkas, used to be on the faculty here at UT Dallas. He is now at UC Irvine with me. And George, when he was in Dallas, did a tutoring program in the Dallas schools that some of you might have known about. George and I are working now with the National After School Association to adapt his tutoring program for the out-of-school, for the after-school settings where after-school staff can get a badge about working one-on-one with students in the literacy area. So I think, so I think that some of those kind of areas, even with the materials that you need, are a bit different, but we think this badge is going to work, and that it's maybe going to really help develop some skills for kids and for staff. Rosemary?
What exactly did you use to measure work habits? What were the components that made them?
Okay. So the work habit scale, when I was in Wisconsin and we were doing an after-school study, we had at first used report cards, and every school had a different report card. It was a problem. So I went to the Madison, Wisconsin report card, and I used their work habit scale. And we then used it in the NICHD study. It's now being used all over the country. It works great. Be glad to send you the items. So it's sort of an academic work habits. And I can tell Margaret's getting antsy. One more question. You.
Well, thank you very much. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about the training and the background that school providers generally should have in order to provide high-quality programs. And then on the flip side of it, thinking about teachers and professional development that they get in the schools to try to be able to emphasize the alignment, right, that they should try to aspire for. But the teachers also get some sort of PD to encourage alignment with the after-school program.
Okay.
So it's kind of a two-part
Okay, it's a two-part question. So let's start with the after-school staff question and what skills they need. I have a different idea than a lot of people have, I think, about this. And one area that I think is that when site coordinators need to think about their staffing in a differentiated way. If you are going to be hiring, as you might be, people with some college, a lot of people when they come and are hired, they come with skills, real skills. It might be soccer or baseball or trumpet or hip hop or any number of areas that kids would be interested in. And so if you hire staff who care about kids and have some skills that they could bring into the program, that's one area. So build on the skills of your staff, but also be strategic in hiring. By that same token, you could be hiring someone who has a real interest, passion in the math area, science area, so that they can take your STEM. We have a number of programs where college students at Irvine are working in after-school programs. They're people who are majoring in biology and chemistry, things like that. So I think you have to be strategic in your hiring. And then you have to use professional development to also build your staff. In terms of I think your second question was how do we go about increasing alignment? And there I think that it wouldn't hurt for schools, principals, to be in the faculty meetings for their teachers to be talking about the role of out-of-school time and after-school programs so that the teachers know. Because sometimes teachers think it's babysitting, and sometimes they think it's, that it's not good. And sometimes it's not good. But it can be, when it's good, it can really make a difference. Thank you very much.